The air inside Detention Complex 9 on Garanok Prime was cold sterile in a way that suggested deliberate cruelty. Light flickered in thin strips across the ceilings, casting harsh shadows over the transparent cells that lined the observation. Ring. Inside those shimmering force fields, row after row of human children sat or stood, motionless, like ghosts caught in time. Some held younger siblings. Some stared at the ceiling. Others locked eyes with the guards who watched them unblinking, unbroken. Commander Silkov stood at the apex of the control platform, his 4 long fingers clasped behind his back, cloak trailing as he surveyed his prize. His chitinous jaw twitched in quiet satisfaction. The humans had resisted, of course they had, but they had not been prepared. The colony on Orin 9 had been a peaceful agricultural settlement. Farms, schools, clinics, no artillery. No fleet, no walls. Easy pickings. Their mistake, Silkov thought smugly, was assuming the galaxy would respect their innocence. The adult humans had tried to form a defense. Some crude militia of farmers and retired medics. It lasted less than an hour. His squadrons had cleared the resistance with precision. What remained was now here. Over 200 human juveniles, aged between 6 and 13 cycles. An entire generation, boxed like specimens. He turned as a pair of visiting dignitaries from the Vesari Council entered the gallery. Their wide, glistening eyes scanned the cells with reverent awe. A bold strategy, one muttered in admiration, voice slithering. Displaying the young. It sends a message. Even their future belongs to us. Silkov gave a shallow nod, savoring the praise. Propaganda is as important as plasma bolts. These creatures define their strength by family, tribe, continuity. Strip that away, and they fracture. One of the children turned suddenly, an older boy, maybe 10, with bruises across his cheek and blood on his collar. He pressed his hand against the force field, palm flat, eyes burning holes into Silkov's face. The commander smiled faintly. Yet they do not weep, the second dignitary observed with a hint of confusion. Why are they so quiet? They understand, Silkov replied, voice like glass on metal. They know their world has ended. The door at the end of the gallery hissed open. A hush fell instantly over the group as an ancient figure glided into the chamber, flanked by 2 armored guards. The alien was tall, draped in layered bronze silk and bioluminescent cords of status. The Zorvani ambassador. Silkov inclined his head. Ambassador Rethkan. An honor. The Zorvani didn't return the greeting. His dark, reflective eyes scanned the rows of children, and his thin mouth tightened. His gaze stopped on a young girl with tangled hair and scuffed boots, sitting cross-legged in the middle of a cell, holding another child to her chest. The ambassador stepped forward, knuckles white. Silkov's voice cut through the silence, still measured. You arrive at a moment of triumph. These specimens are from Orin 9. They were reclaimed. The ambassador turned slowly to face him. You imprisoned their children? Silkov blinked. They were part of the resistance network future. Insurgents. You caged their children? Rethkan's voice rose now, trembling with restrained rage. Are you insane? The other dignitaries shifted uncomfortably. Silkov's smug expression faltered. You believe this will break them? The Zorvani hissed, pointing a trembling finger at the force fields. No, Commander. This is the ignition spark. You have not subdued a people. You have awakened them. Silkov scoffed, though the air around him felt colder now. They are children. Rethkan leaned in close, his breath like winter wind. And you do not yet understand the horror of what you've done, but you will. Behind them, the girl with the scuffed boots opened her eyes and smiled. The corridors of Galactic Prime's high command were lined with armored guards. Their weapons clutched tightly, even though there hadn't been a real threat in hours. But there was a tension and invisible crackle in the recycled air that made their mandibles clench and tails twitch. The words of the Zervani ambassador still echoed in the minds of everyone who'd witnessed his outburst. Commander Silkov sat in his private tactical chamber, clawed fingers steepled in front of him, the expression on his face carved from polished obsidian. Before him, a live hologram pulsed with data monitoring troop deployments, off-world broadcasts, and local traffic. He tapped through them with swift efficiency, trying to erase the ripple the ambassador had caused. The children had been an asset. Now they were a question mark. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Galactic, entered with a respectful bow. "Commander, there is unrest among our outer allies. The Scaran delegation has withdrawn trade offers. And the Zervani embassy has formally condemned our actions." Silkov waved the concerns away. "They are emotional creatures. It will pass. The humans were a fringe species before they made contact with the Galactic network. Their sentimental politics mean little in war." Galactic hesitated. "Sir," the ambassador made reference to past incidents. "Ancient ones. He spoke of vengeance. My team pulled old records, suppressed archives." Silkov raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Galactic tapped a command. The holoprojector dimmed and flickered. An ancient feed grainy monochrome emerged in the air. A crumbling mining colony. Alien bodies strewn in the snow. A human flag fluttering in the background. This was Korvax 3, nearly 70 cycles ago. A mercenary faction kidnapped 3 human children from a Terran diplomatic transport. Ransom demands were issued. The response was, he paused, throat dry, not a negotiation. It was a purge. Silkov watched in silence as Reaper units moved across the recording like wraiths armored in black, weapons firing in bursts too fast to follow. Alien troops fell like grass under blades. Entire command centers went dark within seconds. "They killed everyone?" Silkov asked. "Not just those responsible. They eradicated every outpost connected to the faction. 15 worlds. 16,000 combatants, gone in less than 3 rotations." The screen flashed with the final line from a recovered Reaper transmission. "Return ours, or lose everything." Silkov stood abruptly, his voice low. "This is propaganda." "No, sir. It's history, hidden by fear. The Zervani ambassador was there. He was young then, but he remembers." Silence fell between them. Outside, the detention center's floodlights flickered slightly, a momentary voltage drop. Silkov ignored it, turning toward the broad viewport of the command deck. Galactic Prime's orbit was calm. Too calm. A chime sounded. "Commander," came a breathless voice over the system. "We've lost contact with Outpost Kreltek. No distress signal, no debris. It's just..." The silence in cell block E wasn't natural. It was the kind of silence that waited tight, coiled, like lungs refusing to exhale. The force field barriers shimmered faintly, separating each cluster of human children into containment grids. Overhead, dull red lights replaced the brighter overhead beams, an energy conservation measure, according to the warden. Or maybe a warning the station didn't understand yet. Tell Ren. A young Vesari perimeter guard, barely into his 4th cycle of service, adjusted his grip on the plasma pike and tried not to look directly at the children. They unnerved him. Not because they cried or begged, none of them did, but because they didn't, they just watched. That girl again. She sat cross-legged on the floor of cell E12, chin raised slightly, blue eyes fixed on one of the mounted security cameras like she could see through it. Telrin had caught her staring at it hours ago. She hadn't moved. Not once. He glanced at the time feed. The shift change was late. Again, Static crackled briefly through his comset. He frowned and tapped it. Control, come in. This is perimeter. E, requesting status on. His words trailed off. A noise drifted through the air. Not through the comms, but through the very walls. A soft hum. Then, clicking. Slow, rhythmic. Almost like. He turned toward the cell block. The children were whispering dot. It was so faint, so synchronized, it sounded like wind through dry leaves. All across the cells, the human children had begun to murmur. Not crying, not screaming. Just a low, steady string of syllables like reciting a code. Like singing a lullaby, with no melody. Tel Ren felt cold bloom in his chest. Control, he tried again. I think something's... The lights went out. The emergency glow strips kicked on, painting everything in flickering amber red. Telrin backed toward the exit, pulse spiking. The force fields remained up. The children didn't move. Then he noticed it up in the far right corner of the ceiling. One of the mounted cameras had stopped rotating. It was cracked. A hairline fracture that hadn't been there before. His cum hissed once. Then a sound flat and metallic slipped through. Outpost Krell Tech. Offline. No survivors. Telrin stared at the speaker and looked back to the girl. She was standing now and smiling in the command tower. Silkov gripped the edge of the hollow table as new alerts poured in. Outpost Delaron. Silent. Patrol Fleet 7. Missing. No SOS. Just a sudden, absolute vacuum. Orbic stormed in, breathless. Sir, the sensors. Something's in our blind zones. Dozens of objects. Non-reflective hulls. No heat signature. Cloaked ships? Silkov barked. Too many. Too precise. They're phasing in and out of detection, like they know how our sensors think. The hologram blinked. And another signal arrived. An untraceable data burst. It contained no visuals. Just a voice. Flat, unemotional. Male. You took them. You knew what they were. You knew what we are. You were warned. The transmission ended. Orbic turned pale, his gills fluttering rapidly. Silkov's jaw twitched. Prepare the high. Alert protocol. Activate full lockdown. But sir, I said do it. Outside the viewport, the stars rippled. Dozens of shadows slipped through the black silent. Seamless. REAP. RS. No banners. No threats. Just movement. The war had already begun. And Galactic Prime was no longer a detention moon. It was a tomb waiting to be written. Alarms screamed across Galactic Prime as the base entered full lockdown. Steel blast doors slamming into place and automated defense turrets rising from hidden slots in the walls. Red strobes pulsed in every corridor. But it all felt hollow reactive. Too late. As if the base already belonged to someone else. Commander Silkov stormed into the central command nexus, his cape billowing behind him. The room was chaos. Technicians barked incomplete reports. Sensor feeds flickered, distorted. The main view screen flashed between error codes and static. Somewhere deep in the station, gunfire crackled short, surgical bursts. They're here, whispered Orbic, staring at the feed from sublevel 3. They breached through the outer coolant duct. That's supposed to be impenetrable. Silkov snapped, cutting him off. His lips curled back, exposing needle-thin teeth. So were the last 7 outposts. A security officer turned from her console, face pale. Sir, we just received a message. It's from Earth. Silkov's breath caught for half a second. On screen. The view screen stabilized, the static giving way to a stark black. Background. A silver Terran insignia gleamed at the Center United Terran Accord Special Recovery Division. Then, a voice, calm, male, with a clarity that echoed like judgment itself. To the Vesari Command. You have taken what cannot be replaced. You have 1 hour to return them. 1 hour to release every child. No negotiations. No discussions. We are not here to bargain. We are here to end this. The screen went dark. The command center fell silent. No one spoke. Even the pulse of the alert sirens felt more distant now. Silkov clenched his jaw. Empty threats. But Orbic looked at him, something trembling behind his eyes. Sir, that wasn't a threat. Then, a new voice chimed in, this time from the Galactic relay net. It was patched through from a private frequency, the diplomatic channel. A face appeared on the monitor. Sarvani Ambassador RETH single quotes KA dot. His expression was thunder. You refused our warnings, he said coldly, eyes like black moons. You dismissed our history, but the Terrans remember everything. You didn't just provoke them, Commander, Silkov growled. We are at war. Casualties happen. These are political assets. You caged their young, Rethkon snapped. You desecrated the one thing they place above survival. And now the Reapers are coming, not as soldiers, as a promise. He leaned in closer, as if he could look. Through the screen itself. Let me tell you what I've seen. Silkov, I've seen what happens when a single Terran child is harmed. I've seen a dead planet where forests turn to glass. I've seen black ships blot out a sun not to win, but to erase. Do you know what the Reapers said before they left that world? Silkov didn't answer. The ambassador's voice dropped to a whisper. We warned you. Suddenly, every monitor in the command nexus flickered. The Terran feed had returned, but it wasn't text this time. It was live footage. Night vision. Green-tinted, grainy, shaky, but unmistakable. A dark corridor. Metallic walls. Movement. Figures in matte black exo armor stepped from the shadows, smooth, coordinated, silent. Their visors glowed a soft, pulsing crimson. REAPERS. One of them paused at a corner junction. A flash, an alien guard lunged out. There was no warning. The Reaper's rifle moved once. A sharp report. The guard fell without a sound. Another Reaper crouched beside a bulkhead, placing a small device against the wall. Smoke bled from the ventilation shafts. The scent of scorched metal and ionized blood clung to every surface as the bones of Galactic Prime groaned under the assault. Secondary power flickered on and off one moment, revealing sleek Reaper silhouettes. In the hallways, the next hiding them again in an unnatural darkness. In cell block E, Telrin crouched behind a collapsed security console, pulse pike across his chest, hands shaking. The children were still in their force field cages, but they no longer looked like prisoners. They looked like witnesses, calm, waiting, as if everything unfolding was not chaos, but clockwork, a script already written. The girl in E12 stood with her hands behind her back, chin raised, blue eyes locked on the ceiling as muffled detonations thudded in rhythmic intervals overhead. Boom. A pause. Boom. Closer now. Then silence. Until HSSSSSHH KK. The far wall erupted inward, not exploded. Breached clean and calculated. Steel peeled back like fruit skin. From the smoke stepped a Reaper. He moved without hesitation, tall and imposing in matte black exo armor. His visor burned crimson, heart-like, slow and pulsing. The weapon in his hand swept the room once, marking every threat, but he didn't fire. He didn't need to, because there were none left. Telrin tried to raise his weapon, tried to speak, but his limbs wouldn't obey. The fear had moved beyond his skin into his marrow. His thoughts screamed, run, but his legs whispered, too late. The Reaper strode forward, passing Telrin without even a glance. He stopped at cell E12. The girl stepped forward without needing to be called. The force field dropped with a faint chime. She looked up at the towering, armored figure. He knelt to one knee, removed his helmet. A man, face scarred, jaw tight, eyes tired but soft when he saw her. "Hey, kid," he said gently. "You okay?" She nodded once. "Took you long enough." He grinned through the dirt and blood. Had to make a point. Behind them, more force fields powered down one by one. The children didn't hesitate. They walked forward, some helping younger ones to their feet, others clasping hands in practiced formations. The Reaper commander stood and raised one gloved fist into the air. Another explosion shook the corridor behind them, this one smaller, controlled. Not destruction, but access. 3 more Reapers entered, each marked with red symbols across their chests. They split, instantly guiding the children down exit corridors, passing out ration bars, water, thermal wraps. There were no panicked instructions, no barking orders, just practiced calm, because this wasn't chaos. This was recovery. Dalrin slumped against the console, trying to make sense of it. Why weren't they shooting? Why didn't they punish us? Then one of the Reapers turned back toward him, pausing just long enough to look Telrin in the eye. "You're still alive," the modulated voice said, "because they asked us not to hurt you." "Who?" Telrin Croak, ED. The Reaper's visor turned toward the children walking away, safe between armored giants. They did. And then he was gone. Telrin sat in the quiet that followed, the smoke curling around his shoulders like shame. Somewhere deep inside the command deck, Silkov stood frozen before a shattered holoscreen, alarms ringing hollow in the background. No one was responding to his commands anymore. No guards. No fleets. Only silence and the rhythmic thunder of something closing in. Outside, high above the moon's surface, dozens of sleek black drop pods sealed and launched upward, each carrying children now wrapped in safety blankets, their small heads nestled against armored shoulders. They never looked back. They didn't have to, because Reapers never leave anyone behind. And when humanity makes a promise, they keep it. The Zorvani warcruiser Emergence held orbit above Galactic Prime like a silent witness to divine judgment. From the bridge, Ambassador Rethkan stood motionless, robes unmoving in the chill of the observation deck. Around him, his crew spoke only in hushed tones, the usual confidence of galactic diplomats replaced by a raw, sobering reverence. Below, the moon was dying not in fire, but in silence. Tiny flashes of black drop shuttles moved across the surface, like embers flickering in reverse evacuations, not attacks. The Terrans weren't staying. They weren't here for conquest. They came for one thing, their children. And now that those children were safe, the humans were leaving. Life forms? Rethkan asked softly. His chief sensor officer replied without lifting his eyes. Human extraction units are 97% complete. No confirmed civilian casualties. No known counterfire. Minimal structural damage, just key access. Corridors and defense nodes. And the Vesari? A beat of silence. Most of their command structure has vanished. Local commanders, presumed captured or dead. No transmissions. No calls for help. Nothing. Rethkan closed his eyes, remembering the early days when the humans had first emerged from their cradle world. The galaxy had underestimated them, laughed at their stumbling diplomacy, mocked their emotional volatility. But those same flaws had become their armor. And now, the galaxy whispered about Terrans the way ancient cultures whispered. About storms not evil, but inevitable. Behind him, the communications console pinged. "Incoming fleet," a technician said quietly. Unidentified, non-hostile trajectory. No ID signature, but the words trailed off. They didn't need to finish. The sensor feed bloomed on the central view screen. Black shapes bled from deep space like shadows pulled across the stars. No transponders, no fleet designations, just silence and gravity. Reaper warships hundreds. Each ship moved without formation, yet with perfect coordination. Like predators circling a wounded animal. The Vesari moon base had already surrendered, but the Reapers weren't here for vengeance. They were here to remind the galaxy what happens when you forget what it means to be human. On the bridge of the Emergence, crew members instinctively stood, not from protocol, but respect. One of the alien officers turned toward Rethkan. "Sir, what do we do?" The ambassador didn't answer for a moment. He stepped forward and bowed not to any one ship, but to the invisible Terran fleet. "Watching them from the darkness, we stand down," he said at last. "We bear witness." From the Reaper flagships, no weapons fired. No signals were sent. Instead, one by one, their ships turned sleek shadows, breaking formation and peeling away into the void, like ghosts returning to the stars. The last to leave a ship, shaped like a silent arrow, lingered just above the shattered remains of the Vesari Command Center. Its underbelly doors remained open as the final evac pod slipped into its hull. On the view screen, a single line of Terran text blinked into view, translated perfectly by the ship's language protocols. "They are home." Then the screen went black. Ambassador Rethkan's voice was little more than a whisper. By the void. They weren't bluffing. No one on the bridge dared speak. They had not just seen a rescue. They had seen the execution of a promise. A promise whispered between parents and children. A sacred pact older than fleets or empires. If anyone takes you, we will come. We will come with fire or silence. But we will come. And now the galaxy knew there was no fury like the love of a human for their child. Commander Silkov awoke to pain. A sharp, cracking ache radiated through his chest as he tried to breathe. He was lying on cold metal, arms bound behind him with restraint coils. The once pristine uniform of the Vesari High Command was scorched, one shoulder torn where the blast had thrown him against a wall. Blood not human, but dark Vesari ichor dripped from a wound above his eye and pooled beneath his cheek. He looked up. And froze. He was no longer in the command nexus. The once blazing control room was gone. Instead, he now lay in a large hangar bay emptied of ships, darkened by broken ceiling panels and thick plumes of smoke curling from destroyed barricades. Standing before him were 3 Reapers, their matte black. Armor shimmered faintly under the emergency lights. They didn't move, didn't speak. Just watched. And between them stood her. The girl from Cell E-12. She looked unchanged, tousled hair, dirt-smeared cheeks, a faint smudge of blood on her wrist where she had shielded her little brother. But something in her gaze had evolved. It was older now, quieter, no longer just defiant. It was final. Silkov tried to speak. This was a misunderstanding, a strategic action. I was under orders. The Reaper on the left stepped forward. With one fluid motion, he reached down, hauled Silkov to his knees, and held him upright. A voice, deep and modulated, filled the chamber. "Commander Silkov of the Vesari Occupation Force, Detention Complex 9. You have been identified and confirmed as the senior officer responsible for the unlawful seizure and detainment of United Terran civilians, specifically minors." Silkov's breath trembled. "I was following protocol." "Silence," the Reaper said. "Another." Reaper stepped beside the girl and knelt, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We leave judgment to the ones who were harmed." The girl stared at Silkov, her hands balled into fists at her sides. "You said we were assets," she said. "You called us leverage, bait." He looked away, ashamed but still too proud to beg. My mother died holding the door shut, she continued, voice steady. She wasn't a soldier. She was a teacher. My brother stopped speaking after you took him. But you called him a threat. Her voice dropped, barely above a whisper. You thought hurting us would keep us quiet, make us obedient, but all you did was call them. The Reaper behind her spoke again. You didn't start a war, Silkov. You triggered a vow. Silkov looked up, eyes wide. Please. I'm just... But he didn't finish the sentence. The third Reaper approached, holding a compact sphere. A small, glowing core within, pulsed like a heartbeat. A singularity. Core, the Reaper explained flatly. This facility is marked for vaporization. No record. No remnant. No shrine. Silkov's jaw quivered. No, you can't. The Reaper tilted his head slightly. We don't want to. But this wasn't war. This was theft. He turned to the girl. You decide. Justice or mercy. She didn't hesitate. Justice. The Reapers nodded. The core dropped to the floor, embedding itself into the steel with a sharp hiss. A countdown illuminated in red digits. The girl turned and walked toward the extraction ramp, flanked by the REAP dot. As she reached the edge, she looked back. Silkov still knelt, sobbing now, muttering something about orders, destiny, glory. She didn't answer. She simply said, I warned you. Then she disappeared into the light. Behind her, the hangar erupted in a searing flash as the singularity collapsed inward, folding the entire Vesari command center into itself, like a dying star. No debris, no graves, just silence. A week later, the Galactic Conclave met in emergency session. Representatives from over 200 starfaring species filled the vast crystal chamber, their faces grim, voices hushed. The ornate pillars of the conclave hall, once symbols of order and diplomacy, now felt like gravestones, monuments to a mistake none dared repeat. The Zervani ambassador, Rethkon, stood at the center platform, his robe flowing like molten bronze under the starlight. Around him, murmurs rose from the tiers. Disbelief, shame, fear. Many had known of the raid on Orin 9. Fewer had spoken against it. None had expected the aftermath. Rethkon raised his voice, not loud, but so clear. It cut through the chamber like a blade. You have all seen what happens, he began, when cruelty is mistaken for strategy, when children are treated as weapons, when humanity is underestimated. Silence. He turned slowly, gaze sweeping across the chamber. Let me remind you what you already know, but some of you tried to forget. The central projector bloomed to life, displaying grainy footage captured by neutral satellites orbiting Galactic Prime. The moon imploding into a dense, humming core of nothingness. The destruction was surgical, complete, irreversible. A single word followed the footage. Ours. Several ambassadors turned away. Others wept. Rethkon continued. The Reapers did not destroy a world out of vengeance. They removed a stain. They did not invade for conquest. They came only to fulfill a promise. He stepped closer to the edge of the platform. You call them dangerous. I call them loyal. You call them unpredictable. I call them just. A Krovan warlord slammed his fist on his console. They are monsters, machines of blood and smoke. They never gave us a chance to speak. Rethkon tilted his head. You had your chance. It came when the first child was caged, when the first mother bled on her homestead floor, when Silkov called infants insurgents. He turned back to the council. You see monsters, but you created them. Silence held for a long time. Then the Terran delegation arrived. 3 humans stepped into the chamber. No armor, no weapons. Just long black coats, dark eyes, and the quiet presence of something ancient and unshakable. At their center was a young girl. hair tied back, calm, solemn expression. She wore no insignia, yet everyone knew who she was. The girl from Cell E12 walked up to the speaking platform without ceremony, and the room seemed to tilt around her. She stood small, but unwavering in the center of the galaxy's most powerful assembly. When she spoke, her voice was steady, almost gentle. "You want to know why we came?" she asked. "You already know." She paused, looking around. "My mom taught me that kindness is stronger than fear, that love is fiercer than rage. But even she knew, if you hurt someone's child, you don't get to ask why the world changed afterward." She turned toward the Krovan warlord who had shouted, "Earlier, you called us monsters."